What's up, guys? I'm joined by one of my very best friends today, Brett Silvernail. We have been competing against each other all the way back to junior golf at age 13, and now we're out here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, competing on the Dakotas Tour. Really excited to bring this interview to you today and dive into what makes Brett who he is, what his competitive career has been like, where he hopes to go in the future, and maybe get into some fun life stuff as well. But first and foremost, thank you for joining me. And I guess let's start with the origin story of what got you into golf in the first place that has carried you all the way to age 30 now, still chasing the dream.
Yeah, totally. So I started playing sports when I was like 3 years old or so. Started by playing soccer. Terrible at foot sports, by the way. Played that for like 3 years. Got into baseball. That was like my first love of sports. And when I started playing baseball, like 4 years old, 5 years old, I knew for sure I wanted to be a professional athlete in some capacity. Thought it was going to be baseball. Started playing golf on the weekends with my dad, just trying to literally hit it further with than he could hit it with his own driver. It was like this 44-inch driver, and I'm like, I don't know, 3.5 feet tall, just ridiculous. But like I would connect sometimes, and then he would like top one, and I'd be like, I'd actually outdrive him. So I'm like, all right, cool, golf's cool. So that kind of set me on my way for golf. And then I kept playing baseball for I think 7 years, but then there's just too much politics in it. Like coach's kid would get the position they wanted. Coach kid's friends would get the all-star positions, and I was a pretty decent baseball player. I was never spectacular, but I was definitely better than some of those kids that made it. So I just felt like it took the autonomy out of my hands. So I was like, this isn't for me. So golf is very much an individual sport where, for the most part, you dictate your future. So I knew kind of like when I was 8, 9 years old that golf was going to be the profession that I wanted to try and pursue.
And you played for UC Santa Barbara, correct?
Yep, UC Santa Barbara. I actually had 1 year at Ventura College, and then my remainder was at UCSB.
Finished in 2014?
Yep, 2014.
Okay. And then now at age 30, this would be the 9th year of you playing professionally?
Yeah, 9th year.
Age 21 to 30. Where all have you gone so far chasing it?
So, I mean, obviously we have our local tours, the Bow Tour in Golden State. Everybody plays some of those, or like the real local events like Monterey Open or whatever you have that's just Long Beach Open, that's local. And then tried for Canadian Tour. I qualified for it this year, and then played an event early in the season. But actually, we can get into that in a little bit. But the expenses are just really, really high there. You kind of have to have a sponsor backing you, or at least somebody who can help you with the finances. But I got exempt for the first half of the season and got reshuffled out. And then, yeah, just try to play open tournaments everywhere. I have done Corn Ferry Q School for I think the past 6 or 7 years, and made it through pre-qualifying a bunch of times. First stage I've just sucked every time. We'll just leave it at that. Just not been good.
And then obviously Canada, because you've been there. Any other Q schools, Latin or China?
Never done Latin or China, no. But Canada's fun. It's expensive, but it's fun.
Okay. Have you got plans for this fall?
Yeah, I'm signed up for Corn Ferry Q School right now. I got first stage, so Canadian status got me into first stage, so I'm pre-qualifying.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. This is the environment to brag, even if normally you wouldn't. What are some of your accolades in terms of tournament wins, sports records, best events, things like that?
I'd say the first year where I knew I was like a decent golfer was, I don't know if you know, way back in the BCJGA days, Ventura County Junior Golf Association. They didn't have like the junior boys flight and the championship flight. They used to have A, B, C, and D flight. So the C flight was, I think, for the girls. And then D flight was like the youngest kids, and then B was like middle age, and then A was like the highest kids. So the D flight, 1 year I had like 17 wins out of like 25 tournaments, and then I had like third and second every other event. I was like, okay, I'm pretty decent. So then I just skipped the B flight and went to A flight. I was like, ooh, I'm not that good actually, because I went to further back tees and the kids were really good, and I didn't win a tournament for another like 3 years. And so, yeah, that was kind of a slap in the face. But then coming to, you know, the year before I'm about to go to college, I won I think 5 events of like the 9 I played, and I finished 8th in an AJGA event. Well, I finished 4th and then an 8th in an AJGA events, so I knew those were good finishes. And then in college, I was co-champion of the Big West championship that we had at Saboba, and then I won the SCGA match play championship in 2014.
Nice.
And I've had a couple, probably been beaten now, but I set the course record at Los Robles with a 62. I'm sure that's beaten. And then I think 62 at Oliva still holds at 10 under.
Wow. That's cool to have our home course.
Right.
Okay. And professional wins, definitely more than a handful.
A few on the Bow Tour. Actually, it was funny. I had really good back-to-back weeks. We played World this one, I shot 62, and then Brookside, which is actually a really hard course. They used to have the LA Open there way back in the 30s, and shot 64 there, which was not the course record, but that was, to me, a really good round, because that course is not that solid course.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
it was a cool little stretch there.
Hell yeah, dude. Nice. Okay. You kind of alluded to it earlier. Would love to dive more into the aspect of funding a pro golf career and just how challenging that can be. Off the record, Brett and I are close friends and have been for a long time, so a lot of this I already know about him, but obviously for the interview I would like to pull it out and let you guys hear. How have you gone about funding your career the last decade? You had some involvement with George Gankis and his website and coaching kind of alongside him, and have done a lot of other stuff as well at Forward. Maybe just take me through the last 10 years of how anyone that makes it to age 30 and beyond still funding a professional golf career has got some stories, because it's not
Right.
easy. So
Well,
I'd love to hear yours.
let me take you back 20 years, back to when you were playing junior golf too.
Okay.
So, because if some of you guys play junior golf, or maybe you're looking at this and you're thinking about your kids eventually getting into junior golf, or whoever you are, I mean, it doesn't start off easy. You play a junior golf event, and it's going to be anywhere from $100 for a real rinky-dink little mini tour event that means kind of nothing, but it gets you experience and you're playing in it, to $300 for an AJGA, plus you're probably going to drive or fly and get hotels. So you're looking at, $1,200, $1,500 for the week as a junior. So your parents are, spending that money every 2 weeks or every month trying to put you out there, and then you get into college, hopefully you get scholarships. They don't normally give full scholarships for golf. You can only get quarter or half, or if you can get some academic on top of that too, then maybe you can get close to full. But then normally your parents are going to pick up some of that slack, so it's like you're really pressing your parents a lot. And then if you get out, maybe they'll hopefully help you for a couple years, but at a certain point you're kind of like, all right, you can only ask so much of them. And most of our parents are good, and I know not everybody's in a fortunate situation like that. I know me and Alex have been lucky that our parents have helped us out a fair amount. But at a certain point I was like, okay, these expenses are getting high, so you either have to get a sponsor, you have to have whatever little bit of money you saved up, and then just hit the ground running and be successful in golf so that you can, sustain yourself with your own success. Or you got to get a job. Common jobs would be like caddying would be real common. Bartending at night I think is a really good avenue for players, because they can practice during the day, work at night, get good tips to pay for it. You only have to work 3 or 4 days. But yeah, you got to find some way to fund yourself. So for me, luckily, I guess luckily and unluckily, I was always obsessed with my golf swing and like trying to perfect it for a lot of different reasons. But in 2011, I started working with George Gankis on my swing, and then I worked with him on my game for 2 or 3 years, and then I started studying underneath him. I don't know if you guys, probably most of you guys have heard of Jake Ledbetter at least, because he's around with George all the time. He's out in Houston now. If you guys are ever in that area, you need to get a lesson. Really good guy. But me and Jake, before like George really, his Instagram blew up, would shadow George a lot. Jake stuck around for a long time. I was there for about 6 to 8 months, and really learned to swing underneath him. And then when George's old website went out, GG Swing Tips, I talked to him, and my buddy Morgan talked to him about creating a new website called George Gankis Golf. And so we redid his website, and then I spent about 2 years working on that before it even came out, and then for the past 3 years I've been working on that website and helping the members, giving lessons on there. So I took a hiatus during golf. I mean, I practiced a little bit during that. There was actually a point where I took 3 complete months off where I didn't even touch a club, and most of the time I wasn't playing golf at all, which for me is a long time. But yeah, I spent a lot of time just developing that, going through the videos, I don't want to say editing. I don't actually do technical video footage, more like annotating and organizing the footage of the website. And yeah, basically just set myself up for future work. I had to bite the bullet in the short term, because I didn't get paid for 2 years. It was, it's a startup. It's like a business that people would start up, and you're sacrificing to do that. But now it's up and running. It's been good, because I have a job where I can be pretty much anywhere in the world. I can play golf all the time and still get my job done, either before or after I'm done golfing. So it's a good setup, but it was a process to get there for sure.
Right.
And how cool is it that George is my boss?
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, if you guys haven't had a chance, definitely check that out. It's a pretty cool website, and Brett and the other team members worked super hard on that, and I think it's one of the most groundbreaking pieces of golf education out there today. So yeah, that's like kind of a little sidebar that isn't even the main part of the interview, but is actually super cool that Brett was so instrumental in really a huge innovation in the golf industry. So as of now, that's your side gig, and it's allowing you to essentially travel and compete in events and then work a few hours a day on your phone answering questions. Do you anticipate doing that forever, and does it feel like something that will allow you to get to your peak of golf, or do you hope to someday maybe be more officially sponsored, or just on your own dime, making enough cuts to where you have nothing else to do? Do you feel like in order to get to your peak, you have to have nothing else on your plate, or it's possible to blend it with the side job?
I think when I was younger, I used to think that you have to just be completely entrenched in golf and you can have nothing else. I think it depends on the job you do. I think with my particular job, because again, I can do it, right before I get to the golf course, or I can do it right after I'm done golfing, spend a few hours on there, and I can be anywhere and traveling. It works out well. I kind of cultivated that for myself. I think caddying, if you're a caddy, you can really do it because you're around golf all the time. Hopefully you're at a course where you can set up to where you can practice and play. I think it's doable, but I think if you're working, 4 to 5 days a week, and you're working, in the shop during most of the daytime, and you're only really getting 2 days on the golf course and maybe a couple hours afterwards, unless you're a really good golfer, it's gonna be tough. At some point, I think you need to get a sponsor. For myself personally, I would love to get a sponsor. I like to feel like I'd earn it more from my own ego standpoints. Like, I don't like going out there and asking people like, hey, can you come sponsor me or whatnot, unless I felt like if I was rolling with success, be like, okay, I'm getting top fives and winning tournaments a lot, I'd be like, okay, I'd feel, no matter what, I wouldn't feel great asking a sponsor. It's kind of like, it's their money, why do they owe that to me? Like, I'd like to be a good ambassador to them, and hopefully if it's a marketing deal or whatever it is for them, like, I could bring more to their business. But I don't like going to people and asking that personally. But that's something, if you're needing a sponsor, if you're a golfer trying to get after it, I'd recommend you don't be like me. You should be more of a go-getter. You should be more of like a car salesman, where you put yourself out there, be a mover and a shaker. The worst they can do is say no. So I would recommend that for people. It's just something that makes me uncomfortable. But yeah, if somebody came up to me and was like, hey, I'd like to sponsor you, and here's something we can work out, that would be great. But I also love the job I do. I work with really good people. And the cool thing is we're actually coming out with a new website too. We're going to have George's original website, but then we're also coming out with an academy for junior golfers as well. So I'm looking to put more work on my plate. I don't mind working. I love it. And it's going to let me, I'll have to work a little bit longer hours, but I still get most of the day to do what I need to do. So it's going to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, really cool. Super unique situation. So moving forward, what are your goals with golf? PGA Tour, European Tour, Live Tour, Mini Tours. What are you aspiring to?
So, the dream obviously is the PGA Tour. Ever since I was a kid, the dream has always been to win a PGA Tour event or win a major. Yes, to be on the PGA Tour playing and sustaining yourself as a career would be cool, but I didn't dream of just like playing tournaments. I dreamed of winning tournaments. So that would be cool. That would be the ultimate dream. But, honestly, as long as I can, keep playing tournaments, keep getting better golf. My ultimate goal right now is just to be the best golfer I can. That's honestly all I care about. Because I feel like if I can eventually become the best golfer that I feel like I can be, then I feel like I would have the capability of winning a PGA Tour event. That's genuinely all I care about. It used to be about the results. Now it's more like, okay, let me make me good as possible. If the results fall in place, they fall in place. If they don't, they don't. Golf's a weird sport where, if you're in the MLB or in the NFL or you're whatever, it's team versus team. It's 50% win, 50% loss chance. Obviously, certain teams are better, certain teams are worse. It's not really 50-50, but it's black or white. You're going to win this game or you're going to lose this game. In golf, it's 154 people in the field, and 153 people are going to lose. One person's going to win. So it's a weird sport where you just have to accept loss completely differently than other sports. So, again, that's why I'm just trying to focus on be the best I possibly can, and more specifically, I just want to hit the ball as best I can, because to me, the strengths of my game are the closer I get to the hole, the better I putt better at 3 feet than I do to 5 feet, 10 feet than I do 20 feet. I chip better near the green than I do further away. I'm better at 100 yards than 150. And just the closer I can get, the better I am. I know that's kind of universal for everybody, but I would say it's exponential for me. I get really, really wide off the tee, and I get really tight with my short game, where I have to survive on my short game to really compete. In those rare weeks where I do hit it well, then I can actually get into a tournament and get in the hunt.
Copy that. You alluded earlier, before we had the camera rolling, to swing changes, constant swing changes being something that you've had a hard time getting away from, always feeling like there's another level you want to get to and another change you want to make. And to the naked eye and most people watching, you've been a great ball striker your entire life. But to you, there's always another level you're trying to get to. How much do you think that being a swing technician and knowing as much as you do from an educational standpoint on positions and having understudied with George and learning so much, how much do you think that has helped versus hindered you? And moving forward, what would you like the balance to be between like getting in flow, playing the game of golf versus continuing to strive for more or less the perfect swing in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate double-edged sword for me, because I'm going to use the word, I'm a very lucid thinker, and loosely, I'm not going to say like I'm a brilliant thinker. I don't want to be misinterpreted as that, but I definitely think a lot, and I know a lot about the golf swing, but that hurts you because it kind of opens up the world of possibilities. Oh, I could do this, or I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, but then when you know you can do all those things, it's hard to just, this is what I'm going to do, and here's my path forward, and just sticking with it. So, yeah, no, it kind of kills me because like every time I go to the range, I have a certain look I'm going for. I have certain positions I want to feel in my swing, and there's just certain ways that your body wants to move, whether you're really athletic or you're not athletic, or you have injuries or you don't have injuries. Everybody just moves differently, and some things that you're trying to use theory to override how your body works, and other things you're trying to listen to your body and say, hey, this is my cap. This is what my body can or can't do. So I have to pivot around that, and finding that blend is really hard because like my theoretical side of like, no, this is what I want to be at address, this is what I want to do in the backswing, this is how I want the club to shallow out, and how much rotation I want to have in the downswing, or all these different positions. It's hard to like find that balance because you know what you want, you know what in theory is best, and then you don't want to sacrifice on that. But at certain points, like, dude, you could watch certain swings out there, and I'm not gonna name players just because it's rude to name players. You could watch quite a few players in the Corn Ferry or the PJ Tour and watch their swings, and from like a theoretical mechanical standpoint, you're like, dude, that's disgusting. But it's like they went out there, they know what their game is, they know what their swing is, they never change it, they've mastered what they have, and because they've learned their timing of what they do, they go out there and they kill it. So it's like, okay, even though in theory you might know something better, it's like in practicality, is it better? Is it really better? So it's like, theory is great and it's going to take you really far, but I mean, at the end of the day, the players who master what they do are going to trump players who do something better in theory.
That's well said. Yeah, that's extremely well said. Swing your swing, right? That's like the campaign on Golf Channel or whatever. You kind of talked about injury, non-injury, and that got my brain thinking in terms of the holistic approach to golf that you and I definitely have some parallels in terms of how we approach life, and both of us are, like you said, analytical and our brains quite active. So how big of a part of your process is fitness, recovery, any biohacking related stuff, nutrition? Tell me about your process off the golf course and how important that is or isn't, because golf is like this varying scale of, it's not like other sports. Everyone in basketball lifts weights, everyone in football lifts weights. In golf, it's like an optional thing. Like some guys work out and other guys go drink beer after. So where are you at in that spectrum?
I'll answer it a couple different ways. In theory, I think sleep, I think recovery are just as important as actually practicing your golf game. I don't think you can substitute anything for just raw hours practicing. Hopefully you're doing, quote unquote, the right things when you practice, and that's technique, but that's also like analyzing your stats, analyzing what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, and that's long-term what your strengths and weaknesses are, and also week to week what they are, and trying to balance those skills of, okay, I'm worse at this, I'm going to put more hours in on this, but I'm not going to neglect what I'm good at, but just constantly changing which one you're focusing more on. So that's getting better. Practice is number one. You have to have that. Playing and practicing also, so you have to play a lot too, so you have your scoring in mind. That's number one. Number two, I would say sleep for sure, because Cameron Haynes said it really, really well, because he's a big proponent of like, you can do way more than what most people think you can do. He said a line, unless you're a professional athlete, you don't need sleep. But if you're a professional athlete, sleeping is training. I was like, whoa, that's a brilliant line, because if you are putting in the actual time and energy you need into a sport, you actually need that recovery, because that recovery is going to get you ready for the next day so you can perform better again. So I thought that was brilliant that you acknowledged it that way. So that was cool. So to me, sleep is like the outside of the actual golf stuff, the most important. For the working out range of motion is most important to me, because I've seen some people who are really not that strong be able to really murder the ball and kill it. If you have range of motion to where you can limit yourself to injuries and you can create, how long the club goes back and how far you can turn your body without giving up positions, that's everything. Because then you can create speed while still, keeping good mechanics versus creating speed like a lot of long drivers. A lot of them will create, a lot of hinge in their wrist and a lot of bend in their arm. They go real steep, real narrow. And it's great for just smashing it out there, where you're going to give up a lot of control that way. But they only got to put one ball in the grid out of 8. We got to put, 8 out of 12 in the fairway. So I would say range of motion would be next. I do think strength training is important, but I think it's more important in terms of you have to make sure that you're never going to let yourself get injured, or you're going to limit your ability to get injured on the golf course. That's primary. And then if you want to add additional muscle on top of that while keeping your range of motion, I think that's also a big benefit. The eating one is a really interesting question, because I just think the verdict on food, nutrition, and schedule of when you should eat and not eat is so undetermined just for the human body, let alone for like athletes. I mean, in general, I'd say try and stay away from fast food as best you can. Try and stay away from processed food as best you can, just because you need the energy if you're going to be a professional golfer to practice. The last thing you want to do is get up at 8 in the morning and then you have McDonald's and you have a donut and you're like, okay, cool. And then 11 o'clock hits and then you're just like, well, I'm drained. And to me, when you have that like super low feeling of no energy, it's almost parallel to like feeling mild depression too. So you're like, not only are you low energy, you're also feeling like deflated, you're at a low point. So to me, you just have to eat to where you don't feel like you have a loss in energy. That is the minimum. Now, I know beyond nutrition, not a lot past that. I mean, people say like, okay, ketogenic or carnivore or vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is, or 16 hours of eating, fasting, and then 8 hours of eating, or some people do 14. And I don't know. I don't know what is best or what's not best. I can tell you, for me, if I have something small for breakfast in the morning and I don't have a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, that's generally good for me, because I don't get that crash, and then I'll eat a huge meal later at night. And that's about as much as I can say on nutrition. So that's how I would say to balance it out. But it's weird, man. I mean, we had a buddy, again, I'm not going to name names, but I came out here to the Dakotas with him a couple years ago. Great guy, love him. And he would just eat fast food every time. And he killed it out here. He was top 5 on the money list every year he played out here, and he was just a beast. So it's like, I don't know. I don't really know what the deal is or not the deal is.
That's fair. That's fair. We're all just trying to figure it out. That's interesting. So, if you could summarize all of your time with George and some of the players that you've been around through him and coached, what would be, one or two common threads that you see amongst all of the best players? Be it a physical thing, a mental thing. Have you seen enough world-class golfers to be able to say, like, you know what, all the top guys, like, they got this going for them, and they got that going for them, or does it just feel completely random?
Depends on the player that works with George. Players that are homegrown with George, like Matt Wolf would be a really good example, or Johnny, they hit the ball spectacular. Like, it's freaky how good they play. You watch Matt Wolf hit on the range, he just hits these balls that go so high and so much on a string, and it just travels forever. It's just stupid. Like, everybody knows he's a good ball striker, he's a good player, but when you see it in person, it's just like, okay, I can't. You want to do that, but you're like, I can't do that. So, like, you watch that, and then Johnny just, like, he just puts on a clinic every day. Like, he hits it really far, too. He swings like 122, and he goes hard at it, swings like 128. It's not as impressive as Matt Wolf, like, the dominance of his ball flight, but it's just tight draws every single shot. His big misses are, like, a couple feet in the rough. He's just so in control. The rest of his game's not bad. I wouldn't say it's like spectacular, but his ball strike, he's just so beyond impressive. It's incredible. So people who are homegrown with George, they just all hit it impossibly good. That's what drew me to want to work with George in the first place. It's like, watch him, like, how good are they? Then the other players that come to George, not particularly good ball strikers, and that's why they come to him and they work on it. But to me, it's their patience and their work ethic. A lot of players that I've seen work with them are just, they're just workaholics. They just, every day, they're putting in 8 to 12 hours, and like, this is my job. Dude, they almost look at it like a person starting up their own business. Like, if you went to, let's say you wanted to start up a laundromat or whatever your business is. If you ask any business owner, they're going to say, well, when I first started my business, it's minimum 10 hours a day, but it's really probably more like 12 to 16 hours a day until I start making money, and then maybe I scale it back to like 10 or 12 hours, or until they can eventually get more employees. But they tackle it like a business owner. It's like, dude, unless I'm on the PGA Tour and until I get to where my business is successful at that level, they are tackling it like their whole life depends on it. Like they have to get to a point where they can make money constantly like that. They're not just like, oh, okay, I'm cruising. I'm a pretty good golfer, and I know I can be successful like that. They literally work like their life depends on it. So that would be probably the two most common threads I see.
Interesting. Well, is there anything, any piece of advice? I think most of our audience is probably either on the same path as us or aspiring to get there in the future, whether they're in high school or college, trying to learn from guys like us that aren't necessarily at the peak of our sport yet, but are on the right path and making progress. Anything that you could share with the younger audience interested in pursuing pro golf, piece of advice or a mistake that you made that you learned from now and could help somebody else avoid making, what would be your advice? Maybe the best way to put this would be like to a younger version of yourself. Go back 10 years and give yourself a piece of advice.
Work hard and work smarter. You can't, it's the old cliche of like work smart, not hard is not true. It's work hard and work smart. Like you have to, the pace out here in Dakotas is, people work hard, but some people ride on natural talent, they can just keep going through. That ain't the case on the Canadian Tour. And the Canadian Tour is like, for an equivalence, it's like AA baseball. AAA baseball will be Corn Ferry, and the MLB is going to be the PGA Tour. You watch those guys get out there, they fly out there Sunday night or coming in Monday morning, and even though they just got off a plane, they're going to work for 6 hours that day. Next day is going to be a 6-hour practice round. They're going to work for 4 hours after 4 hours before they get their practice round. They're going to do the same thing on Wednesday. They're going to play the Pro-Am. They're going to put another couple hours. Play the tournament, same thing, put in the hours afterwards. And I'm sure they're going to the gym and doing their stretching and all that stuff too. Like, you don't even see that. But they're just putting in the hours constantly. But they're not just putting in the hours. Like, everything they do, they're always working towards something. They're always setting up a gate drill in their putting, or they're putting down a string for their putting, or they're making a cross tee for their putting for alignment, or they're working speed drills, or they're working on some technique in their chipping, or they're videoing and sending it to their coach, or they're working shot shapes and ball flights, or they're trying to hit yardages on their TrackMan or foresights or whatever they're trying to do. They always have a specific goal. They're not just going out there randomly. And a lot of those people are, not in like a position where I am, where I'm kind of my own coach. Like, I can always go back and bank on George, but a lot of them will always have their coach on hand. Be like, hey man, like, this is what's going on this week. Can I send you a video? Yeah, okay, cool. We'll try this. Perfect. Now that's working. We'll now start working on your yardage, work on your shot shape. Let's make sure like all those things are valid. You're not losing that with, whatever you're working on technically. But they're always trying to leave no stone unturned. And that would be the biggest thing. They're like trying to control as many variables as possible. That way they're not blindsided. I think a good example of that would be Bryson DeChambeau and Matt Fitzpatrick. They're probably the best on tour right now. The story is that Matt Fitzpatrick, since he was 14, has written down every single yardage he's ever hit, which I don't doubt it actually. I had a friend who went to Northwestern with him, and he said he was kind of a freak like that. And when I say freak, I mean in a really good way. And then Bryson, dude, that's enough said. What Bryson does, everything. He's spraying his balls on the range with water. Be like, well, how much is this changing the RPMs of spins? Like, dude, he doesn't leave anything to chance. Yeah. And, it's like, do you have to be that crazy about it? No, but the more you can try and unturn all those stones, the better you're going to be, the quicker you're going to get there, and the more consistent you're going to play. And it's easier to learn that when you're young. Again, everybody's at different stages of life when they're learning this, but if you're young, learn it young. When you're older, it's like, yeah, you're a little bit behind the curve, but better to start now than start later. That's what I would say.
So good. Not to be an antagonist, just curious what you'll say. I agree with everything you just said about the more analytical and information-based you can be about it, the better you're going to get. That just makes sense logically on paper. But then how do you explain, like, where did Dustin come from? And there's a lot of examples. John Daly. And where do these guys that seemingly just have their brains shut off, and again, I'm not going to name names, but there's players on our tour as well that kind of embody the same thing. How do they do it?
You use the same word again. They're freaks. So here's a good analogy, and I'll bring it back to that. So, and again, I'm not underplaying hard work. I'm going to use Ben Hogan. I'm going to use Sam Snead as an example. If you go back and look at them, they have two of the best golf swings ever, two of the best ball strikers ever. Now, did they have access to TrackMan? No. Did they have access to swing coaches? Well, what was a swing coach person who said, like, oh, you look like you're getting a little out of rhythm there, buddy, or you play the ball an inch further back in your stance? Like, swing coaches really weren't a thing back then. Like, you had a couple that were around, but not really. So what determined, like, who was a good golfer or not? in a short word, chance. You basically had the equipment they played, which were really sharp line angles. I mean, negative bounce with like 90-degree angles between the leading edge and the bounce of the club. You had really flat line angles. You had a lot of balls that were just easy to slice or hook off the plant. Like back in those days, there was a shot called a snap slice. We don't even know what that is. We have a snap hook, but you could spin the ball so low that you could literally hit a snap slice. Like if you watch The Greatest Game Ever Played, where I'll call him Francis for the movie, where Francis literally hits one that like ducks in the trees to the right. Like that's a real shot with those golf balls back in the day. So like your balls could do that. So you had to be so precise. So the players who like survived or excelled on the tour back then were across the board great ball strikers. Like super rare somebody would be a good short game. Because I remember looking at a chart, like I think it was 1967. They had the stems for like all the classic great golf courses. The fastest on the stemp I think was 9.6 for Oakmont. Then you had like Pine Valley was like 8.7, and you had all these other courses that were like all underneath 9. There's like 2 above 9. Wow. You're like, dude, 9 right now is going to a Muni. You know, it just, the greens have gotten so much better, so much faster. Like the ability to make putts and get up and down in short game is now at a premium. Back then it was all about ball strike. You had to hit it close to go and have any chance of making a putt. So they were just knocking down flag sticks. So back to the point though is, you know, you have these parameters. These are my balls, these are my clubs, these are the conditions I hit out of growing up in Texas where you basically have dirt and hard pan. Like you have to hit the ball flush. In the wind, you have to be controlling your line because in the wind with any deviation is going to go way off line. So you have to control all the variables, and the players who picked up a club and organically their body reacted well to those variables were the great golfers. And golfers who didn't, they didn't have instruction to work back into that. And so that's why those people excelled. Now again, Ben Hogan worked ridiculous hours. I'm not trying to like take anything away from players like that because to me he's like the model of somebody who can work hard. But those things really dictate who's going to be great or not. And then now if you look at it, you know, you look at somebody like a Dustin Johnson or Bubba Watson. It's like those freaks are going to exist in every generation. The cool thing about this generation is that you don't have to be a weirdo athlete. You could be this brain who can't excel in any other sport, but you can work really hard, you can be really smart, you can understand all the things you need to understand, and you can actually become a great player, if not, you know, a player on the tour or win majors. You can be the best player in the world. Again, I'm not trying to disrespect like Master Patrick, but I want to use him as a great example. Like, he doesn't strike me as a spectacular athlete, but his method to golf is so incredible. It's like that's something you can take and put in your pocket and become a way better golfer. And, you know, U.S. Open. I mean, how cool is that?
That is cool. That was a good answer. One last question. Any points throughout your career as a pro or even previously in college where you thought about quitting, and if so, what have you done to motivate, or maybe that's not the right word, but how have you continued going? Because I have tremendous respect because I myself walk in the same shoes. It's a razor's edge, man. Like any given week, you could break through the next level or you could just throw it all away and quit. And so anyone that's continued going to age 30 and beyond, it's like, whether they show it or not, there's something behind those eyes. They've seen a lot, they've been through a lot, and somehow they found a way to keep going. So get as deep or not as you want here, but to talk me through some of the harder moments in your career.
So instead of looking at this like in a general sense, I'm going to make this one real personal. I think about quitting every day. I mean, golf's really hard. I mean, the days you're successful, it's not every day, but the days you're successful, whether it's like you go to practice and you can feel certain things, you're just striping on the range, like those days are easy. You don't think about quitting those days. But even if you just play mediocre in golf, like you're like, I'm hovering around the cut, and then you're like, all right, I'm in the cut, or I'm outside the cut, or whatever, like the back and forth, like dude, like this isn't really that fun. To me, the thing that keeps me around is it's not because I love it. I do love golf. I do love the competition, but it's more like I feel more like I'm cursed. Like I feel like I'm so compelled to play golf that there's no way I couldn't try and compete. It's like I don't have any like real meaning to my life outside of golf. Golf is like the one thing that draws me. It feels like I actually have a purpose of being here when I play golf. That's probably the best way I could describe it.
Got it. I can relate. If people want to reach out to you, sponsors or people with questions, best place to do that on your Instagram? Or...
Yeah, I guess if it's personal for me, just DM me on my Instagram.
Where's that?
Brett, I think it's Brett Silvernail. I have to double check, but pretty sure it's just at Brett Silvernail. I don't go on my Instagram that much. Or on George's website. I would check out his website for sure, whether you sign up or not. I mean, it's georgeyankis.golf, and we're going to come out with a new one. And then also we're going to start doing a podcast at Ford Golf with me and my buddy Chad Dietz. So
cool.
that's something else you could check out, and I'm sure I'll be on there a lot. So it's primarily his podcast, but I think I'll be on there a fair amount with him.
Thanks, bro. This is a lot of fun. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching.
Later,
See
buddy.
you next time.